Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today on this video, part 3 about asset protection and understanding asset protection. And I'm Brian T. Bradley. I'm an attorney and asset protection attorney, and I'm licensed in California, Washington, Oregon, and Michigan. And I guarantee you that you're going to go away from this video learning something of value. I've made a slideshow with one of my affiliate attorneys, Doug Laudmill of Laudmill and Laudmill, and we use this video for teaching seminars. I'm gonna jump into some of the different tools that we use, the concept of domestic versus foreign asset protection, and how they relate to the U.S. Constitution's full faith and credit clause, and how to get the best of both worlds. This is really where the legal geek in me comes out. I really enjoy this. For you California residents, I have another video that I'm going to put out about how to maximize your state exemptions as an asset protection tool, utilizing the private retirement plan, PRPs. That's going to be another video. And so let's jump into what we're talking about today. Foreign versus domestic asset protection, some tools, and what we call the bridge trust. And so let's start with the goals of asset protection. We've gone over them a few times, and I'm going to keep going over them to lay down that foundation. The overall goal of any asset protection system is to create a legal barrier around your assets that allow you to continue to use and enjoy them while making it as difficult as humanly possible for an unintended predator to reach them. The result is that you're going to radically deter the majority of those predators. And if you get attacked, you have the tools and system in place beforehand by being proactive to successfully protect your assets. And again, this is about being proactive planning before you need it. If it's not done beforehand, it's most likely not going to be enforced. It's going to be deemed fraudulent transfers. And so this is about planning before you need it, like any good situation, looking forward. And the result is you're going to end up being happier, less stressed, more productive, since you'll have less fear about conducting your business, hiring and firing, contracting, and sending your kids out to drive your cars. You'll have more peace of mind about your financial security. So what are the main tools used? Limited liability companies, AMLPs, the asset protection trust. First, you want to understand how your plan works. The goal is to change the way a predator and the plaintiff attorney view you, from an asset-rich target or mark to a high legal cost or money sinkhole for their time and effort. So part of an asset protection system or plan is deterrence, besides just really good jurisdictional protection. So to work, 4 things have to be true. Your system must be seen as impenetrable. It must be managed properly. The plan cannot attract a lawyer to want to actually try to challenge it, thinking he or she are going to get a payday, and it must work. So as a client, we attorneys then know that you want 4 things. You want an effective plan. You want to control your plan. You want reasonable and sustainable cost. If you can't afford the plan or any plan, then you're not going to have a plan, and you're still going to be vulnerable and open. And you want a plan that's easy to maintain compliance. If it's too difficult for your CPA to file taxes on, it's too difficult for your attorney and your CPA to figure out what to do, then you're not going to be protected. It's all going to collapse upon itself. So any asset protection system that you're going to set up has to be looked through the glass of effectiveness, control, cost, and compliance. And this is how we're going to utilize our analysis of different systems as we go through them: effectiveness, control, cost, compliance. So this then gives us tools that we use. So limited liability companies, asset management, limited partnerships, and asset protection trust. So let's start with the LLC, the limited liability company. The LLC is a great first layer and an entry place to start. If you don't have a lot of money to spend and you want to do something, start with the LLC. You can place all your risky assets into one LLC, but you want to separate or segregate asset holdings from operations and operate your business dealing out of another LLC called an operating company. So you should consider at minimum setting up 2 LLCs, one to hold your assets in and another one to actually operate your business out of and do the contracting out of. By using LLCs, you're limiting your personal liability, separating ownership, use, and control, and changing your facts and the way the IRS see you with pass-through taxation. And they also have good charging order protections. The second tool and the next step up is an AMLP, an Asset Management Limited Partnership. It's similar to an LLC in that it has a layer of protection around it to limit liability, but it's a step up since this also works very well as an asset holding company itself because of its two different classes of ownership that an LLC do not have. It has a general partnership interest and a limited partnership interest. So the general partnership is the controlling interest, and that is typically you, the client, giving you control of your assets. And then there's the limited partnership, which is your asset protection trust. So by dividing it up, you get a distinction of separation of ownership and control. And remember, asset protection is all about separation of ownership and control. You want to separate your assets. The third tool is the asset protection trust. It's the heart and soul of the system. My affiliate Laudmill & Laudmill renamed their version of an asset protection trust to the bridge trust, since it's an easier concept to relate to. So when you just think about it, crossing a bridge from point A to point B. So what's an asset protection trust? All asset protection trusts are self-settled spendthrift trusts. This means that they're self-settled, meaning by you for yourself as your own beneficiary. And so this is a distinction between a general living trust or other estate planning trusts, which are not self-settled. And then these trusts also have the very important spendthrift provisions in them. And spendthrift provisions are the provisions that allow you to protect your assets from creditors. So you're getting a twofer. It's self-settled by you for you as the beneficiary, plus spendthrift provisions. There are two versions of self-settled spendthrift trust, international and domestic. So let's start with the international option. The international came first. It was created in 1984 in the famous Cook Islands. And the greatness of this trust is that it has statutory non-recognition of any other jurisdiction court orders. That includes U.S. court orders. What this means is that your U.S. judgment is worthless. You would have to start your case all over from scratch in the Cook Islands, facing the highest legal standard, the murder standard, beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest possible legal standard. The claim's not amendable, meaning that once you file your complaint, that's it. You can't change or amend it after discovery. If you lose, you pay. So with a very, very high burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, whoever's attacking you is almost certain to lose. So they'll be paying your legal fees. Also, you can't hire contingency fee lawyers. And the statute of limitations has most likely already run, since it's a one-year statute of limitations to file a suit in the Cook Islands. Basically, before they even take a shot at suing you in the Cook Islands, they've most likely missed their statute of limitations. The Foreign Asset Protection Trust has been around for over 30 years and has very strong case law history about how it works. So comparing this to the four things clients want: one, effectiveness. The Foreign Asset Protection Trust gets 5 out of 5 stars. I mean, remember, you're talking about statutory non-recognition of U.S. judgments. It doesn't get stronger than that. But the other three, control, cost, and compliance, it falls short. For a Foreign Asset Protection Trust to work, you must be out of control of the trust and subject to a foreign trustee. The cost will be high. The cost goes from about $1,500 to maintain to over $5,000 to be purely foreign. And if you're a purely foreign trust, you now have a lot more IRS reporting compliance and disclosure issues that you have to file every year. The first state to pass a domestic option, so now we're transitioning to a domestic option, was Alaska. Now, 16 U.S. states have passed domestic self-settled spendthrift trust legislation in one way or another since then. The cost of the domestic asset protection trust is lower since it's not a foreign trust. And the compliance is less since it's not a foreign trust. You have less mandatory IRS reporting requirements and less disclosures. That's the good. But you lose on effectiveness and control. Purely domestic asset protection trusts fail on these points of effectiveness and control. First, the purely domestic US-based trust has been around for half the time as the foreign asset protection trust. And we've seen rulings coming down domestically, taking down the highest profile domestic asset protection trust. And failure means breach and asset loss. This is just completely unacceptable for an asset protection system. They failed because of the hallmark of asset protection itself. The hallmark is not recognizing another jurisdiction's orders. Yet the hallmark of the US legal system is the US Constitution. The US Constitution in Article 4, Section 1 provides that every state must grant full faith and credit to the judicial proceedings of every other state. This means that, for example, Nevada can pass an asset protection statute, but it can't ignore a California or Washington or Florida court order or any other court order from another state. You can't run from judgments in the US. So on this front, the purely domestic asset protection trust is very different from a foreign trust. Also, on the control front, they're weak since you must make sure to give up the control of a domestic trust to a trustee for the trust to even carry any strength domestically. So what do you do? Which do you pick, foreign or domestic? The answer is neither. If you're our clients, you have the benefit of both, which we call the bridge trust. This is why we named it the bridge trust. The trust we create for our clients is both a foreign offshore asset protection trust registered in an offshore asset protection jurisdiction like the Cook Islands. You have an offshore successor trustee that's ready to go on the standby, who has already done the due diligence on you and your trust. However, for the purpose of IRS reporting and disclosure codes, your bridge trust is considered domestic. For tax purposes, this means that none of the above offshore foreign IRS filings are required of any kind. No IRS Form 3520 or 3520As. No IRS FinCENs or FATCA disclosures. No IRS filing requirements of any kind. Assets can remain in the US with your current bank, and there's no requirement for a foreign trustee. However, if your bridge trust is threatened with any event of duress that we call typically lawsuits or any other thing that would threaten the assets that are in the trust, we then cross the bridge from the US domestically to the safety of the foreign asset protection trust in the Cook Islands. At that point, your special successor trustee in the Cook Islands would take over, and you would have the full protections of the Cook Island jurisdiction. And you still have all the benefits of the assets that you normally would. You'd be able to invest how you want. Once the threat leaves, the assets transfer back to the domestic trust. So let's recap. To recap, and if we go back over the tools, we have the Asset Management Limited Liability Partnership. That's your holding company in the middle where you consolidate the bulk of your assets. Then you have your LLC that holds your riskier assets down there on the bottom left, like real estate, planes, boats, cars, etc. Then you have your bridge trust on the top right over there, linking your US domestic protection system to the Cook Islands. Let's also now show on the bottom right your revocable living trust, since that's also important. So the LLC in the bottom left corner is going to be owned by the Asset Management Limited Partnership in the middle. That lock there in the middle owns the LLC, which is your holding company. What goes in your holding company in the middle, remember the Asset Management Limited Liability Partnership, what goes in that holding company directly is your cash, your stocks, your bonds, your receivables, essentially anything that can hurt somebody else. It's not risky, there's no key, there's no motor, there's no door, something you don't need to purchase liability insurance in for. So all the risky assets go in the bottom left corner in the limited liability company. Everything else goes into the asset management limited partnership. You'll be the general partner of the asset management limited partnership. That figure up top of the person, that's you. This gives you control of the assets in your holding company. And your bridge trust is going to be the majority limited partner. That is the non-controlling interest, but it's the ownership interest. So at this point, one of two things happen. Either you die and you need to pass your plan on to your heir, which is your revocable living trust on the bottom right, and the assets will distribute per your instructions inside your trust. You'll maximize your state tax exemptions, avoid probate, and smoothly pass your assets on. Or you have some type of crisis, in which case the bridge trust is triggered and the assets flow through, and if necessary, we cross the bridge from the US domestically to the Cook Islands with those assets and then move them from the threat outside the US. Now you see how this fits together, and I hope this makes sense. If you have questions, feel free to email me, Brian, B-R-I-A-N, at btblegal.com, or you can visit my website, www.btblegal.com, or Laudmill's website, www.laudmill.com. We have a lot of tutorial videos on there for you breaking down these concepts. They're very informative. And if you feel like this is something that you're interested in, please feel free to contact us for a consultation. And I hope that you enjoyed this video and that it was very informative for you during this maze of asset protection. Take care. Thanks.